Hello, and welcome to Stage Perspective. My name is Charles Peters, and our very special guest today is Mr. Craig Dickens, a very good friend of mine for many, many years. I'm very pleased to have him on the show today. Hello, Craig.
Hello there. How are you?
Now, Craig, I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, what do I call you? I know everybody likes to put people in a box. It's like, all right,
Zod. I prefer Zod. Kneel
Zod.
before Zod and kiss the hand of Zod.
That's right, Neil before Zod. I just got compared to Zod because of my beard the other day. I was like, thank you, I'll take that. But you're a magician, you're a
Mhm.
designer, you're a builder, you're a consultant, you're actually a show writer in some ways. There's so many hats that you wear, but I guess if we just had to like say one thing about you, it'd probably be like you're a magician, right? I mean, I
Yes.
guess.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
more
It's
importantly,
all always revolves around magic and illusion, no matter
right.
what I've done. It's
Yeah.
always that's the core.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, that's taken you, my goodness, you had such a, I guess the illustrious is a good word, illustrious
Okay,
career
I'll take it.
so far.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you've traveled, to far reaches of the world and, overseas, all on, just doing what you do.
Yeah.
How did you get started? Like what generated that? Was it a spark of performing, or was it a spark in magic, or was it both?
I've always been a ham. In
Hmm.
grade school, I always wanted to be in the plays. I loved being on stage. I used to be an altar boy when I went to grade school with St. Joan of Arc Church. And it's funny, in my mind, I was always looking at those as shows, it's like being the perfect altar boy, and doing the readings and everything was just comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And when I was in the third grade, there was a school talent show that took place, and an upperclassman in the fifth grade, who I'm still friends with, by the way, Bob Chapman, did a little magic show, and one of the tricks he did was a finger chopper, the little Adams metal finger chopper, the cigarette chopper. And I remember the girl he brought up starts crying or whatever when he chops her finger, and then she holds, oh, she's still there. And I thought that is fantastic. So came home and told my dad about it, and we were not far from Top Hat Magic Store, which used to be in Evanston, Illinois. And the next day we drove on over and he bought me a finger chopper. And I actually still have it. It's sitting on a shelf.
Wow.
And that started the interest in magic. So, you get the catalog and just start buying a few things. And the interest waned for a while. And then my brother at that time started showing movies at birthday parties. This is, of course, we're talking, 1970s. There was no videotape, and what they do is they'd sell 8 millimeter little shorts, clips of different movies. And he placed an ad in the paper and started bringing a projector and screen to kids' birthday parties and showing these things. And that Christmas, Marshall Burdine had released his TV Magic Kit, and there was the rice bowls trick in it, and I could not figure out how it worked. So I asked for one of those for Christmas, and I got the magic thing. But anyhow, my mom, was sort of acting as the booking agent for my brother. And she actually later on became a full-fledged music booking agent in Chicago, one of the biggest there. Um, but a client asked, well, what do the kids do while he's changing the films? And she said, well, my other son does magic. And she said, well, pay him $10. And that's how it started. So it was my brother and I doing shows together. And then very slowly the magic took off and I started getting bigger and bigger magic tricks and just found an absolute love and passion for it, um, that has carried me, whatever,
Yeah.
and I still have all those catalogs. And sometimes I will go back to rekindle that feeling, to remember what it felt like, how exciting it was, because now it becomes matter of fact. It's what you do. You don't
Yeah.
even think about it, but, just to rekindle that feeling, and yeah, the shows just got bigger and bigger and bigger. My mom became a very successful booking agent in Chicago, so now suddenly she has networks and connections, and with that, started doing bigger and better shows in Chicago, and here I am.
Yeah. That's interesting. Did you ever meet Marshall Brodeen?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it's interesting. Um, there was a local TV show in Chicago called Mr. Magic's Magic Castle. It was on Channel 26, which was a really low end UHF station there. This is back when there were like, 6 TV stations.
Hmm.
We're talking 1974. And so it was live every Saturday morning at 7 o'clock in the morning. So, I mean, it was downtown Chicago. We'd have to get up at 5 to get there and everything. Um, but Marshall Brodeen was supplying the host, Ernie Johnson, with all of the illusions. And Ernie had told me, Marshall has a show coming up and he needs doves. And I had doves. And I said, well, you can borrow mine, but only if he comes by to pick them up personally.
Mm.
So didn't think anything of it. A week later, I'm lying in bed, the doorbell rings, and my mom comes running into my room. And mind you, this is the same year I got the TV Magic kit. This is my
Right.
first year in Magic. And she goes, Marshall Brodeen is at the door. And so I throw on my robe, I walk to and there's Marshall Brodeen standing in our living room,
Wow.
waiting to pick up my doves. He, unbelievably gracious, gave me another Magic kit, whatever, and was just a sweetheart.
Huh.
And the last time I actually saw him, I was performing at the Magic Castle Awards banquet at the Beverly Hilton, which you also did as well. And he was in the audience, and I closed the show with my lullaby levitation, which is the girl flips off a bed. And after the show, Marshall ran up to me to tell me how it had fooled him. And I was just, here's the guy who, kind of got me started. And, suddenly it's like, oh my God. And the respect was just, it was fantastic. It was fantastic.
I have a similar story like with Mark Wilson, having grown up in Texas, and I would spend my time behind the shop reading his book, and just learning. And that was sort of the first like sleight of hand book. I know by today's standards it's very basic, but for a beginning magician it's very enlightening. And it was and seeing that he was from the same area that I was, he grew up in Fort Worth and all that, and he had achieved national fame. I meeting him, and then the very first show we did a brunch at the castle. He was the host. He was the MC.
Oh,
and so, I have a very funny story, like where he actually broke something on stage just as he introduced us, and turned around. The curtain went up. It's actually kind of funny because he introduced us, and he had just done the sucker egg trick and cracked the egg into a wine glass, not thinking. Realizing the curtain was coming up, the glass, you just do the physics, is on the table, and he's trying to get the table off quickly.
Oh,
so what happens to the glass? It just flies off, hits the stage, and he is just completely befuddled. Mark, wherever you are, I love you, and this is not a knock against you. But the next thing, I get up off the trunk, and I'm now nose to nose with Mark.
Oh, boy.
I mean, he's turned around, he's confused, and he's trying to figure out how he can clean it up. And the glass and everything, and we're literally like nose to nose, and I just went, hi, and then went on with the show, and he ran off. It was just like, that was my first time on the castle stage, and my first show was with Mark Wilson, which I thought was very circular. So it's funny. I remember as a young guy going in, and I probably was the same for you. The thing that fascinated me was going into like a magic shop, especially like a really good magic shop, and seeing all those things on that top shelf, seeing all those little boxes and tubes and things and panels and the colors, and going, oh, what is that? And looking at that. I mean, even in a catalog, but really seeing it in person was just, was something.
Oh, yeah. It's funny. I have bookcases set up here, and the whole top layer of all 4 bookcases is filled with those exact props from my childhood. And I graduated from Top Hat Magic to Magic Incorporated in Chicago or whatever, when I was informed there was an even bigger, better magic shop there. And of course, it was iconic. You go in there and you'd see like cube and a tube and a catalog, and there's something, there it is.
Yeah.
And I remember walking in the Magic Incorporated one time, and they had a Milson Worth fantastic frame, which at the time was about $65, and the average cost of a trick then was maybe $10, $15. So gorgeous. And I go, what's that? And he goes, it's very expensive. And I said, yeah, but what is it? He goes, it's very expensive.
Right.
Whatever. And so I was like, wouldn't even tell me what it was or what it did. I have one now, and I remember getting that. And it's right. I paid $650 for that. So it was very expensive. But every time I walk by it, I think about that feeling of seeing that thing. It's like, yeah, you got one. It's right there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's how they always were. It's how I was. Kids would come in and go, "What is that?" And I'd go, "Yeah, you can't touch it. Sorry.
Yeah.
Nope, it's not for you. Here's this." Here's this
Hmm.
Tenyo trick. Uh,
Yes.
so, who were some influences when you were starting, like in magic? I mean, also, I
Well,
have to apologize to the audience watching this. You're going to have to do research, and I'll help you as best I can because we've already talked about finger chopper, rice bowls, frames, and you have no idea what we're talking about. Just know that it's fascinating and beautiful and well made and wonderful. But who are some early influences for you?
well, the first was Marshall Brodeen, because I
Hmm.
remember the little booklet that came with the magic kit, the TV magic kit.
Yeah,
It was like 50 magic tricks you can do, and he's on the cover in his full tails, holding
yeah,
a dove and a
yeah,
silk. And I remember when I got my first tails, I stood in front of the mirror,
yeah.
trying. So it was Marshall Brodeen to start, but then my dad took me to go see a show called The Magic Man in Chicago, and this was in the winter time of 1974,
Yeah.
and it was an unknown performer doing his first big gig. He was 18 years old, David Copperfield,
Hmm.
and he blew me away. First of all, it was a theater in the basement of a bank,
Hmm.
uh, and so, but it was all grand illusion, and they were all built by John Gaunt. John Gaunt is like the Stradivarius of magic builders. His
Yeah.
reputation is just extraordinary. If the magic specials of Doug Henning and David Copperfield, it's John Gaunt. Mark Wilson, it's all John Gaunt. It's
Right.
the premier
Hmm.
stuff. So
Yeah.
all of these John Gaunt illusions are on stage or whatever, and relatively close. And David Copperfield had a finesse that I had never seen before. It's interesting. The magicians in Chicago at the time said, "Oh, it's just a dancer," and they taught him some magic. No, he
No.
was doing card fan productions, difficult sleight of hand, dancing cane,
Yeah.
dove productions. I mean, the real stuff, but with moves that were unlike anything. It was mesmerizing, and he was so charismatic.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh my God, that."
Yeah. Yeah.
And it took him like 2 years after that to hit with his first special on TV, and then he was off.
Yeah. There was no stopping him
And
after that.
yeah, and the most successful magician in the world. You can say Houdini is more famous, and that the fact that a guy who's been dead 90 years, everybody still knows the name.
Hmm.
But as far as success, there's no one better.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating. That show, when it closed, um, they then rewrote it. And by the way, it was the most successful show in Chicago history at the time. When that show closed, the producers who owned all the props, David didn't own anything in that show, ended up redoing another show called The Magic of Young Houdini, which was then in the round. So there were certain effects from that original show that can't be performed in the round, letting folks in on magic secrets. Sometimes it's all about sight lines.
Yep.
So my mom had somehow contacted them because we had some inquiry about where did you get this or whatever. And they mentioned, "Oh, we got a bunch of illusions in the basement. If you'd like to come by, we'll let them go." And I go by, and there's the stuff I saw David Copperfield performing. So I bought a number of pieces, and this is like 1976. So most of them I sold off, but I always retained one, which was the most iconic one for me, which was a sword box illusion, which is a box a girl gets in and you pierce it with swords, and when you open the front, she is vanished. You actually performed that,
I
I remember.
used it. Yeah. I had one that I bought and then I borrowed that one and used it
Yes.
for a couple of performances. Yeah.
And so anyhow, I hung on to that one because that was the illusion when David Copperfield performed that really showed his moves. He was grabbing swords over his shoulders, behind his back, all with these dance moves. It was so fluid and mesmerizing to watch.
Hmm.
So I hung on to that one for a long time. But I had a good friend, Mike Caveney, or whatever, who I was talking to a while back, and he told me that David Copperfield, who was an avid magic collector and actually recreated his first magic shop in his warehouse, uh, so very sentimental and nostalgic, he has nothing from that show other than the
Yeah.
posters and the programs. And I'm like, this has to find its way back to him. One
Yeah.
day I've got to give this back to him. And I had a lot of friends who kept telling me, "Oh no, sell it to him. He'll pay a lot of money for that." And I go, "I don't want to sell it to him. I need to give it to him. It's an emotional thing." So several years ago, finally I had contact with David Copperfield. He started buying some smaller effects from me and stuff like that. And we had set up a meeting where I was going to be coming out to Vegas to meet with him. And he decided instead of it being in his warehouse, it would be at his house. And so, with my wife in tow, we brought along that sword box in the trunk of the car. And meeting was delayed because he was waiting for somebody else to show up. So, I mentioned, hey, I brought you something. It's in the car. You want to come see it? And he was like, well, we only have an hour, and I go, yeah, but, you want to come out and see what I got for you? And he goes, well, just bring it in. So we bring all the pieces in of this thing, which is all taken apart. He's walking away. He comes walking back, and I hand him one of the swords. And he's staring at it. And I go, yeah, it's been a long time since you touched that. And he's staring at it with his look, and I say, yeah, this is your sword box from the Magic Man. And watching the transformation of this man back to the kid looking in the Magic catalogs, his jaw dropped. And he was just like this, clearly moved. And that prop is still on display in his living room. It's the only illusion he has in his house. It's in his living room next to everything. And he put a little picture of the guy who built it in it, Alcorn. And yeah, it was really touching. But I remember telling him how motivational it was seeing him perform that. And his response was so funny because he said, Craig, I was imitating Ricciardi.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing. And so all this time I'm thinking, I've been imitating David Copperfield, imitating somebody else, not realizing that he was channeling somebody else.
Yeah.
In all my younger years, I was channeling him.
Yeah.
So yeah, fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
We're just giving our viewers homework is really what we're doing. So now you have to really look up Ricciardi, because Ricciardi, I impersonated Ricciardi because I used some of his moves from the broom suspension where a girl floats off of a broom, and it is, his routineng is just fascinating, beautiful to watch.
Almost just like a matador with all of these very grand,
beautiful
moves, but so perfect and pristine. It's like watching Gene Kelly or Fred Astaire doing magic, because it's so precise. It's not just, hey, how are you? It's every move is choreographed and it's powerful, and knowing how to sell it and make it theatrical,
Yeah. We're not the only ones, because I know a lot of other magicians are like, you need to watch Ricciardi. So, that's great. So, but you started and you were doing magic, and then you had a dove act for a while, which I totally forgot about, that you had doves for a long time. And then you started, what was your first, doves are such a hard thing to keep. So, that's a commitment and a half.
Noise.
And the noise and the smell and just everything, the training. What was your first illusion? Like your
an Abbott's Arrowhead illusion that I bought at Magic Incorporated, a little head box you put on the spectator's head, and you stick a bunch of swords or arrows into it, and their head vanish. I still have it. And that was the first, I'd say, illusionette. And then the first big illusion I got was a zigzag illusion from a local magician named Steve Harris, who I met, a young kid. And it wasn't a great zigzag, but again, I kept it for, close to 25, 30 years before I finally let it go. But it folded down so we could transport it in the car. And I remember the pride I had with the fact now I have, this beautiful full stage illusion.
Right.
And that thing, it was built by a guy named John Garner, who was a local magician and builder. It wasn't great. So it needed a lot of repair and tweaks. And that's sort of where I started learning how magic can be built and how it should be built. And it's kind of like all the problems I had with that thing, when I finally saw the zigzag from the Magic Man that was built correctly by John Gaughan, I was like, and seeing how structurally different it was, and how something that's made right and something that's made poorly differ, and the difference, and just getting that mindset is like, it kind of costs money to do it right. You can't do it on the cheap. So it's like, you've got to have something welded. You got to have some reinforcements in there. You can't just go, this will hold,
Yeah, because you're talking about hundreds and hundreds. That's the thing about the difference of like building a set for theater and building a set or building a prop or something that's going to last maybe, 6 weeks, maybe a couple of months, maybe 3 months, unless you're doing a Broadway run or a tour or something. But, typically a lot of props are just built and it's like, oh, there you go. And we'll make another one if we need to. But with
Yeah,
a magic prop, you build it for like to last for years. You build it
yeah.
for, to what we refer to it as being able to troop, being able to
Oh
travel
yeah.
from town to town and be slammed by people who don't know what's in the crate, you know,
Hmm.
being
Yeah.
slammed around. Johnny Gaughan's props are kind of like looking at I don't know, a brand new car. The finish on them is just like it's always
Oh
like a pristine lacquer mirror finish if it requires that, and they're just beautiful. I mean, just look at it. I mean, there should almost be a museum just for his work, like just for
yeah.
people to
Hmm.
just to look at the work. Forget about the trick, just to look at the workmanship. So, yeah.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned looking at an automobile because I remember talking to him about, how he decided to do certain things. And it was with automobile technology in mind. It's like,
Hmm.
remember, because he had the most elaborate pinstriping of whatever on his props, hand
Yeah.
painted pinstriping. And remember, he said, it was an automotive guy who he brought in to do that. And his finishes were automotive finishes. They were hard, lacquer
Hmm.
automotive colors, which nobody was doing at that time. And then,
Yeah.
heavy duty marine boat hardware on the things that, not what you'd buy at a local, you know, hardware shop. You have to
Right.
special order this stuff or know where to go to get it. So it was always with that automotive, boat technology in mind. He was the first, he used to put fiberglass in the bottom of his props, which was,
Yeah.
back in the 1970s. It's like, oh my God,
Yeah.
is just
Yeah.
fascinating, the
Yeah.
technology behind it.
Yeah, really. I've seen a few of his up close, and
Yeah,
they're amazing. I
they're
remember the
great.
first time I saw an origami, and I was like,
Oh yeah.
wow,
Oh yeah.
wow, really something. So you grew up in Chicago, obviously,
Yes.
or just outside Evanston, right?
Evanston, Illinois.
I'm sorry, Evansville. And
Evanston. Mhm.
Oh, it is Evanston.
Yeah, we're not far from Northwestern University.
Oh, okay. There you go. Just to give people a reference. So, what prompted you? Because at some point you started, were you building illusions in? I know you were building. When did you start building for other people? I know you built stuff for your own stuff
First,
because I know you did shows in Chicago where you built things because I ended up
yeah.
buying one of them. Uh,
Mhm.
but when did you start building for other people?
I was building for myself. I was in a show called The Phantom and the Superstars. It was at the
Hmm.
Drury Lane Theater in Evergreen Park, suburb of Chicago, and it ran for 8 months. And there was a dancer in that show, an adagio couple,
Hmm.
who had actually won American Bandstand's dance competition. They were fantastic, and it was an extremely tall, like 6'2" African American guy with a little 5'4" blonde bombshell, and he would throw her around and spin her and stuff. Well, he was studying magic, and I ended up having to leave the show for 4 days because I had a commitment to perform with the symphony orchestra, and there was no way I wasn't going to do that. So I suggested him to fill in for me during the show, and it really lit more of a fire under him.
Hmm.
And so he was the first one who asked me to make something for him. His name was John Ross. And so I built a few props for him, and then magic is a very small community. The word kind of got out that I was doing this or whatever, and so then other people started contacting me, and at the time, my friend Pat Albanese, or whatever, and I decided to form a business selling illusions. So took out ads in magic magazines, which put us in even more of the public awareness or the magic, performers awareness as to
Hmm.
I'm here and this is what I do and here's photos of it. And it just kind of takes off from that. It's like every attempt I've ever done to advertise beyond that doesn't really work because it's really reputation and word of mouth. And within the magic community, which is very not insular, but everybody seems to know everybody of name or prominence. News travels fast,
Hmm.
and very quickly, the reputation spreads that you're reliable, you do good stuff, the prices are right, and people start calling, and then you start creating your own stuff, and that creates a whole new level of market where now you're the one they have to go to get that
Right.
stuff.
Yeah. And there's
Um,
the old thing of, when you put an ad out, you get all the Well, you get a lot of looky-loos, and you get a lot of,
Oh yeah,
people pricing and not thinking about the end product and not thinking about what goes into it. They're just shopping by price, and those
exactly.
are not the people that you deal with. You deal with
No,
people who go, I want this, and whatever it costs to make this happen, that's what I want. And those are the
yeah,
people you typically deal with. Is that I'm
yeah.
sure I know you've had your dealings with a lot of people that don't
Oh yeah.
understand that,
Well,
but
actually, some of them, they don't know, how expensive magic props are,
mm-hmm,
and they'll use the equation. Oh my God, I could buy three TVs for that. And I said, you
yep,
could buy three TVs for that now, but do you know what it cost to develop the first TV?
right,
The millions of dollars it cost to get that, and then the millions invested in production lines to mass produce it. I said, you are asking for something that's one of a kind,
mm-hmm,
custom made,
yeah,
and there's time involved. And also, once you get it, it's going to be generating income for you for a
right,
long, long time. I get paid once. You keep generating income from it.
right,
So it's an investment in your future.
yeah,
But yeah, it's a little hard. Sometimes, people, it's like, oh, look, it's just wood. How expensive can the wood be? And it's like, well, all right, if that's how you're going to look at it, Stradivarius, what's that wood worth? You
right,
know,
yeah,
what's
exactly,
that violin worth?
right,
Yeah, it's just wood, but look at what somebody does with that.
right,
So
yeah,
yeah, but yes, still get the inquiries every now and then. Or it's the thing that always I would laugh inside, but would tell me, where somebody was, in the magic hierarchy,
right,
when they would say, well, I'd build it myself if I had the time. And I go, okay, so you've just insulted me. You basically said anybody can do what you're doing, but I'm going to have you do it. And then you give them a price and they're like, for, oh my God, for what?
right.
So it's, yeah. But
That's funny.
when you deal with pros or whatever, they
Yeah,
know what things cost.
yeah,
They have an expectation that's a lot more realistic, and it's a different thing.
yeah. An average cost of, just for viewers' sake, average cost of an illusion, like if you wanted to buy, and this is a very basic illusion, if you wanted to buy, say, like a Cub Zag, which is basically like a box. The girl gets in. There's giant tubes that go in to show she's not in there, and then the thing slides to one side. It's on a little platform. It's a beautiful illusion. It's fun. But it's not something that like modern illusionists would go, oh my gosh. It's a very basic thing. It's kind of almost passe at this point. What's
Yeah.
that cost? What's like the average price on that? Just to give you a
Uh,
reference, what would you say?
I would
Ballpark.
say maybe 5 to 7,000, depending on who's
Yeah.
building it.
Just to give
Uh,
people a reference, what we're talking about is because they go, oh, what's
yeah,
expensive? Is like, that's a very low end thing. And that's
yeah,
5 to 7. Yeah. So,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly,
Yeah. So,
exactly.
so what
So
brought
you can
you?
find them used every now and then for less, but yeah, new.
Yeah. You
On
certainly can
average,
find stuff used, but yeah, it's
yeah,
still
on the
expensive.
average now, it's like the average cost of an illusion, that's not extraordinarily high end, is you're pushing close to 10 grand or whatever, and then it goes up exponentially from there.
Yeah.
So
I think normal people would have real sticker shock and just not understand. If
yeah,
when you start looking at things like, water torture cell or
oh yeah,
an elevator illusion, or, it's like,
exactly.
what?
Well, at the same time, it's like costumes for shows. I
Sure.
mean, working with a Broadway costumer and everything, and if people knew what those outfits on stage
Hmm.
cost, but
Yeah.
also, it's not just somebody pulling out a pattern. There are no patterns.
Right.
It has to be custom fitted and to accommodate whatever has to happen in the show. And it's not just, oh, come by and you're done. There's fittings and testing and fittings, and oh, does
Yeah.
this work? And oh, we got to reinforce that.
Yeah.
So it's a process. It's not so much just bam.
Right.
Many times I have magicians, especially in Europe, who contact me and say, I'd like to buy the plans to this, whatever. And I go, well, there are no real plans to this. There's sketches and measurements I have on a piece of paper, but there's no way you out of the blue could ever build this.
Yeah.
There's all these little tricks and persnickety aspects of it where the clearance has to be just right.
Hmm.
And oh, you welded a little crooked, not going to work.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
that actually is one of the biggest things that has changed since I started building magic, is that now the majority of the props are made out of metal.
Yeah.
Where back when John Gone was in his absolute heyday, there was metal in them, but they were predominantly plywood.
Right.
Beautiful birch plywood with lacquer finishes. Now everybody is requesting aluminum. They want it made out of aluminum. More durable, paint finishes are usually powder coated, so it's not something the builder's doing. He's farming that out to have these parts are going to be black, this is going to be that, and it's a really durable finish. So
Mm.
it's a whole different approach and level to building, where now it's not so much something you can just do in a basement workshop anymore if you want the really A stuff. It's where, all right, you got to know how to cut metal, and you've got to know how to weld, and where to go for this resource and that resource and this resource. You can still make absolutely great serviceable props out of wood,
Right.
but that era has kind of moved on, and
Yeah.
it's like, there's a whole different approach now,
Interesting.
and in magicians, where, sometimes their first question is, you know, what's it made of?
Yeah.
Is it metal or wood? Because wood, in our experience, doesn't hold up. We want metal. You go, okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. People put their, feet through wood, and people
yeah.
things crack under pressure, and forklifts, etc. So
Oh yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Whereas metal, you could practically slam it against the wall and it's
Right.
it's still okay.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. Uh, you mentioned Broadway. I know
Yeah.
you've worked on some Broadway shows, or shows that I know you actually went to Broadway at one point,
For
and
Spider-Man.
you worked on the Spider-Man show. And let's clarify, after the initial opening, right
Oh
after
no.
they hadn't
Yeah.
opened
No,
yet,
this was just a couple weeks before its supposed
right?
premiere.
So you didn't have anything to do with any accidents or anything to do
Oh
with any
no.
of that. You were
Oh
brought in
no.
because of that, to say, how can we help and fix this? So
Yeah. It was. Yeah, that was an experience. That was an experience, where the people I was dealing with, everybody was just, you know,
yeah.
uh, uh, dealing. It was a difficult, situation,
Hmm.
and yeah, I was brought in. They had a character called Arachne in the show when it first initially opened, who was like Spider-Man's nemesis, who was an actress, who is a spider, a
Right.
female spider, and she was one of the people on opening night who ended up being trapped hanging over the audience.
Mhm.
Um, but the problem is, I saw it. There was a great book written about that show, by the way, and I'm not mentioned by name in it, but there is like a 2-page thing in there about the project I worked on. And basically, what happened is I was asked, through a magic consultant named Marshall Magoon, had worked with the costume designer on a previous show, actually, the Monty Python, Spamalot.
Yeah.
He had worked on him with that. So they knew of him, and they needed help because one of the things that was requested was Arachne goes into a newsroom, throws off her trench coat, and legs pop out. And
Right.
so they're like, okay, how do we do this or whatever? And so Marshall contacted me and said, is this possible? And we engineered a way of doing this, and making it. So they're like, okay, we're going to give you some, money for proof of concept. So they sent us money for proof of concept. So we made one leg, made a video of what it does, what its limitations are, which is important, what its limitations are, and sent this off to them. And they responded and said, okay, we're a go. And they ignored every one of our limitations and said, we want this, 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 and this, and this, and we need it in 3 weeks. And you're like, oh, geez, oh, wow. And so, did what I could in 3 weeks and then flew to New York to present what it was, but everything was being done wrong. They built the costume without the prop, thinking that this thing will just slide in without any effort. It's like, no, the way it works is you have to adapt the costume to the physical reality of the prop. It doesn't work the other way around. So the same day I fly in on a red eye, I'm now introduced to the actress, and they're in a fitting room, putting her in the costume, trying to force this thing to work.
Mhm.
And it had already been choreographed, and they refused to change the choreography.
Oh my God.
They wouldn't change the costume. They wouldn't change the staging. And, we made a video of it working and showed them, here it is. It works. This is what you have to do to make this work. And it was basically something as simple as the costume has to split in the back. It can't open in the front. And then when you throw the costume off, the girl has to do a single pirouette. So centrifugal force pulls these legs out. They're like, no, 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 she's not going to do that. And so there's no alternative but to kind of go, okay, okay,
Yeah.
it is what it is. I've
Yep.
done my job.
Right.
There's video proof that it works. Mm. But later on, that entire character was, removed from the show, just rewritten when they were trying to salvage the show, not because of my effect, but just the actual structure of the
Yeah.
show. And then, of
Well, there were a
course,
lot of issues with that show, as I know, and
oh yeah,
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 and I mean that's an interesting story because it's not an isolated story. It's a kind
oh
of
no,
it's a parallel for many encounters you've had with people wanting magic props, and that's another hat we can add to your collection as special effects,
yeah,
creator, because you
yeah,
worked on. I know you worked on Mary Poppins, right?
yes,
And
yeah,
it went to London. You did some things
mhm,
for that. I know that you
yep,
did. I remember you working on a thing for The Invisible Man on Broadway, where you had
yep,
to have a handprint appear on a wall, a bloody
yes,
handprint. I
yeah, the
remember you had
handprint.
the other thing was the Invisible Man ran while he was invisible, so there was no actor. Had to run over and grab the woman's breasts and manipulate her breasts, and it had to be very visible. And you built like this motor thing inside or
Radio
whatever.
controlled
Yeah,
bouncing breast
it was
bra.
very funny. You're like, check this out. And so
And
what
that
are
was
some
so much
I'm sorry,
that
go
was
ahead.
so much fun to say, just to tell people, what are you working on? I'm working on a radio controlled bouncing breast bra.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's well, you really do embody the Walt Disney thing. If you can dream it, you can do it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's very true because there's, people come to you with really wild stuff, especially when you're talking about theater where they go, we want to do this. And you're like, okay, well, let me think about that. And you usually come
Hmm.
up with something. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Did I name all the shows you worked on? I know you worked on those three. Were there other Broadway shows you worked on or other shows
Yeah.
like that?
Gosh, I worked on uh oh Aladdin,
Mm,
whatever. Actually,
okay.
pre-show concept props. It's like the magic designer on that, Jim Steinmeier, had some wonderful ideas for staging the appearance and disappearance of the genie.
Hmm.
And so to sell them, he hired me to make little tabletop models
Oh, okay.
to demonstrate what these would look like. And one of them actually ended up in the original Broadway show.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, a whole bunch of pre-concept concepts for that. There's an effect in the show where there's a small table and he throws a cloth over it and you whip the cloth away and now it's fully set with silverware and everything like that. So
yeah.
I made a version of that for their prop department to then run with. Hey, here's how it can work. Go.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were a whole bunch of different shows. It was like Into the uh,
Into the
gosh,
Woods.
I'm trying to remember. There was a wilting flowers that had to be at a weird angle or
Right.
whatever. There was
Yeah.
another one. It was a Sutton Foster show
Yeah.
where they needed a bow. She was going to shoot an apple off of somebody's head, and they needed a
Wow.
bow that would vanish the arrow. So when you draw it back and let it go, the arrow goes away, and
Uh-huh.
then they have a different against a piece of scenery that shoots an arrow out of the wall like a knife board. And so I had
Right.
to make that bow.
Yeah.
Yeah, just really unusual stuff. But those are fun.
Yeah.
Those are really fun figuring it out.
Yeah.
Sometimes financially, it's not great because you kind of give them a budget, and then what you thought would take 3 days takes a week or a week and a half.
Yeah.
But you're going, hey, I get my name in the little credit thing, and this
Sure.
leads to more work. So
Yeah.
it's fun.
Yeah. And I know you've had a lot of those. I mean, like things overseas or people doing videos and just on and on. It's too many to name,
Yeah,
but I know you worked on those Broadway shows. What
yeah,
brought you
yeah.
to LA? What took you to Los Angeles?
When I was growing up, nothing was more important than appearing on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson.
Hmm.
This was
Yeah.
my goal.
Hmm.
And from Chicago, I kept sending videotapes of
Hmm.
everything I was doing. And it's funny, I would put a little hair on the video cassette. We're talking video cassettes, folks,
Hmm.
Uh, so I could tell when I got it back if it had been even opened or played.
Uh-huh.
And basically, I would be getting stuff back from all of these shows and could tell they haven't even watched it. At the time, I was so naive, I didn't realize they're getting 3,000 pieces of mail
Oh
a
yeah.
day.
Yeah.
So there's no way.
I
But,
rem I remember my brother and I tried to get on uh was it Survivor, I think,
mhm,
as a team or something, or some show or Amazing Race as a team, and I dropped off the videotape, and he or Jeff did, I can't remember, but he said the room was like a 10 by 10 room or a little bit bigger, like a size of a bedroom, and it was filled, not just stacked, but they were literally just throwing the tapes in there, and they were all the way up to the ceiling. it
Oh
was
yeah.
just a room full of videotapes. So if you can imagine, that's like that's just that one thing, So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Anyway.
interesting. So I ended up going to a seminar. They had used to have these learning annex seminars that had different subjects. And there was one who was a talent coordinator for the Pat Sajak talk show at the time.
Hmm.
And so I went to that and basically asked him, how do you get on the Tonight Show? And he explained to me how it works. And he said, first of all, there's no way you're getting on the show on a videotape. They're not trusting network television time to you. They have to see you multiple times live so they
Yeah.
can trust you. And then they work with you to develop what is the strongest parts of your act. And then that is what you're going. He said, it will never happen when you're in Chicago, ever. He said,
Hmm.
it's New York and LA. Everything in between
Yeah.
is flyover as far as they're concerned.
Right.
It doesn't matter what your credits are here. It will never happen unless you're there.
Hmm.
And so I was like, I have to move to LA.
Yeah.
So that precipitated, my move to LA. My friend Pat Albanese was living in Florida at the time, and he was ready to make a move as well.
Hmm.
So we got in a car,
Yeah.
we drove on out to LA.
Yeah.
And of course, the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson came and went. I never did get on it, but there was an interesting story when Conan O'Brien was the host for a very short period of time. The Tonight Show called me and said, "Do you happen to have a sawing a person in half illusion that could work with a man?" And I happened to have just gotten one back that I had built for a production of Pippin that
Hmm.
was in LA. So
Hmm.
it's sitting in the shop. But I'm in the middle of deadlines, and it wasn't my focus anymore. And I declined. And I
Hmm.
remember as I was hanging up the phone, it occurred to me, you just turned down the Tonight Show. The reason you came out here, it finally fell in your lap and you
Right.
said no.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is I didn't care. It's
Yeah.
like the priorities had
Yeah.
changed. It was
Hmm.
different. Also, the Tonight Show back then, it was iconic. If you were on
Yeah.
that, that
Yeah.
was a career. You had a career now, multiple
Yeah.
appearances. Now it's just one of many shows to
Hmm.
be on, and it's just, oh, he's on TV. Oh, okay.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
it's not like everybody's talking about you the next day because
Right.
there's so many
Yeah.
viewing choices now.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. That's interesting. I remember you telling me that story. Yeah, and it's kind of a bittersweet thing, but it's also sort of an empowerment,
yeah,
because you performed. I mean, from the time you were performing with your brother up
yeah.
until, what, maybe 10 years ago you stopped? 8 years
It's,
ago?
yeah. I would still, every now and then I would perform with symphony orchestras as
Yeah.
Drosselmeyer,
Yeah.
or not with symphonies, with ballet companies,
Right.
Drosselmeyer's to get on
Yeah.
stage. But yeah, it's been a good 10 years since I've
Yeah.
actually been on
Thereabouts.
stage.
And
Like
it was a very
17 since I stopped doing magic. Yeah,
Right. It was a very specific choice because you were building a lot more and more, and you were starting to invent things, and it was
yeah.
becoming more challenging, and it was becoming more lucrative. And I mean, there's quite a hustle, as you know, being a
Oh, yeah.
performer in any industry, but especially in magic. It's all you're kind of your own, unless you have a really good manager, and that means you have to be at a certain level. You're kind of your own guy. You're
Oh,
promoting,
yeah.
you're doing everything, which is one of the reasons why I enjoyed it so much, is because I had control of everything. But you're
Hmm.
you're kind of doing all the promotion, you're doing your designing, how your
Oh, yeah.
show is, you're writing the show, the whole thing,
It's a completely separate job. Is
hmm
getting the jobs. Getting the
yeah,
jobs is a
yeah,
job, and also the industry was changing at that
yes,
point when I stopped. There were very few places that were now hiring people for shows.
hmm
Instead, it became where you had to self-produce. They call it two walling or four walling,
yeah,
and most of the people you see in Vegas, it's like they're either two walling or four walling. In other words, they're paying to be there, you
right,
know,
yeah,
but they know that they can, make enough money because of a name
right,
or whatever. So,
yeah,
it's rare when a hotel or any or producer now will just hire you. There
right,
are some shows that do that, but there's like ensemble shows that still do that, but it's rare.
hmm
It changed how it worked changed, and also when I got out to California, my interest in just doing traditional magic ended, where it's like I need to be unique, and so I created all these unique routines which
hmm
were no longer a fit in a production review.
yeah,
It's like they didn't understand them. I remember going to a local club when I got out here and seeing like the standard dove, a dove worker and tails, and I figured, oh, I'm going to take this place by storm. They wouldn't hire me because they couldn't imagine my type of stuff working in their format.
Right.
But the saving grace was I realized that they wouldn't have hired Copperfield, they wouldn't have hired Doug Henning, they wouldn't have hired Harry Blackstone Jr., they wouldn't have hired
Yeah.
Penn and Teller.
Yeah.
Any of the top people, David Blaine, not a chance in hell. Any of those performers who created their own thing would be an inappropriate fit for these clubs and these formats because they knew, they wanted the traditional, you come on out, you produce the girl in the glass box and that's it. And you're going, no,
Right.
no, no, no. I have a story to tell. I'm going to be singing a song while I'm doing it. No, stop that singing.
Yeah.
Stop that dancing. What's with the story stuff? Just do the
Right.
trick. I'm
Yeah.
going, but there's so many people who just, you know, I'm sorry, the word, a lot of times the word is hack, but I prefer to use like wedding band,
Right.
where they buy stock things, they only sing covers,
Yeah. Well,
there's no creativity, and they work.
we used to refer to that as package A or package B.
Yes.
It's like, and that was the big thing when I started. It was like, we fought against that so much, was
Oh
like,
yeah.
what do you want to do? You want to call up, Owens and go, or Johnny Gone and go give me package A, which would be this,
Yeah,
and this, and this.
exactly.
And then we'll start working. And it's hard because you see that working and you go, oh, maybe if I just scrapped all this creativity and I just did what everybody else is doing, I could
Yeah.
work more. It's very hard. But you also, I mean, the other thing with magic at that time was that it was moving away from your influence was Copperfield and the storytelling
Mhm.
and creating little vignettes, and a lot of what I did was a lot of like vignette performing. But I was seeing that too, was that around 2000 it was starting to shift. It was starting to
Oh yeah.
shift into kind of this like different vibe, and there were a lot of, obviously there's always young people coming up and doing
Oh
different
yeah.
stuff, and that was
Mhm.
kind of taking over. And so that more traditional style, it's very antiquated to see like a Dove worker today,
I know.
and it's like old fashioned magic. So
Yeah.
but that's interesting. So but when you
Yeah.
moved to LA, you came out with Patrick,
Mhm.
with Pat, and you guys opened a shop
Yes.
and started in Glendale and started really kind of networking, and word got out,
Mhm.
and you started
Yeah.
building for a lot of like big things. I know you built some really big illusions,
Yeah.
and that sort of took off. And then at that point, I think you said you kind of got to a point where I think your last big hurrah was you kind of revamped your whole act, which was really cool because you had like the dancing dress and you had a bunch of
Mhm.
stuff and you changed your look a little bit. And then you kind of had that
Yeah.
run and you were like, you know what? I'm kind of done doing this. So, and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That last actual performance was at the Magic Castle, where I was always bored with the traditional. I mean, I'm
Hmm.
building a lot of times what we would say would be, not standard, but to the traditional kind of magic for everybody else. But in my world, I want to push the envelope. I want to, and so created an act, whatever, and did it at the Magic Castle, and half the audience understood it and the other half didn't.
Yeah.
And and when I talked to the town coordinator at that time, and he clearly didn't get it and said, oh, we got lots of complaints and stuff like this about the trick that's going wrong, that it's not well rehearsed. And I said, you don't understand, it's supposed to go wrong. It was basically an escape effect that goes wrong and the audience sees me, I'm sorry, get mangled. So I'm supposed to be
Right.
pulled to the plate and you see a bone, hear bones crushing and see
Right.
the shape of the person
Oh, I remember that. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
destroyed, whatever, and then it recreates. So it's almost like
Right.
everything's straightening out.
Yeah.
And
I forgot
and
about
he
that
actually
illusion.
perceived it as something literally going wrong because we played it straight.
Yeah.
We
Mm.
had the stage manager suddenly bring up house lights and the sound system dies. Like, okay, this is something just went horrible. You just witnessed a performer die on stage, and
Wow.
you know.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating because now you kind of go, that would be something for David Blaine now. That would be
Right.
something for so
Yeah.
many performers who Alice Cooper would like. I
Hmm.
mean, so yeah. But
Yeah.
we have a mutual friend in excuse me, Rick Marcelli, who was a very popular manager. He actually represented David Copperfield and Smothers Brothers and Shields and Yarnell,
Yeah.
and a lot of 1970s, 1980s performers.
Hmm.
And I remember him giving me the advice. He says, as a performer, you're one of the many, but as a builder, you're one of the few.
Yeah.
And this would be an opportunity for you to really grow and make a name for yourself where you're not in competition with hundreds or thousands. You're in competition with no one because you're creating your own stuff and
Yeah.
marketing.
Yeah.
And it was excellent advice.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like, I think he is absolutely right. It's time to just, still in magic, taking a shift. And the difference is that before I would be creative for me.
Right.
Now I get to be creative for everybody. So if I have
Hmm.
a concept that I come up with, I'm thinking, well, this would never work for me or him, but it would work for him. It would work for him. It would work. So I'll, pitch them and let them know, hey, here's something I've got. This, are you interested?
Yeah.
And also you get to know everybody's secrets because everybody comes to you and, I need this. And so you get out of your own head and start thinking through their eyes and through their head. It's like, okay, what they're trying to do is this, so boom. So it's incredibly fulfilling, much more than the performing was. Although the feeling of being on stage is still the most incredible feeling in the world.
Hmm.
And I do miss that.
Yeah.
But the other aspects, not so much.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the other thing is you were building and you were also performing. So there's a sense when you're a performer, kind of have to take care of yourself, like
Hmm.
physically, like what you
Yeah.
look like, how you dress, there's an image that you have to upkeep. And when you're a builder, it's like, eh,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, not that you don't look good and you don't take care
No.
of yourself, but it's like
Yeah.
there's not as much pressure of like, well, maybe I need to do this or do this,
Yeah.
and
It's like I
change
would
this.
never have the facial
Right.
hair if I was still
Yep.
performing. It'd be like,
Hmm.
no, you got to,
Yeah.
for what I was doing, clean yourself up,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I remember the advice, again, Rick Marcelli told me, whenever you go out in public, you have to look like a star.
Yeah.
He said, you can't be a schlump. You're on everywhere you go.
Yeah.
And, and it's a mindset and a persona. I remember there's a great story about Marilyn Monroe walking down the street of New York with a friend of hers, and nobody's paying any attention to her, them. And she said, oh, should I be her? And suddenly she became Marilyn Monroe, and eyes turned.
Wow.
And same clothes, nothing changed except her attitude, and you're sending it out.
Hmm.
It's like that feeling of being on stage where um, you can feel energy being fed out where you're on. And by
Yeah.
on, I don't mean mugging and all this kind of stuff. You're shooting the charisma out
Yeah.
and shooting the energy out to connect with
Yeah.
people. And
Yeah.
that feeling of owning a stage, of being the only one standing on stage, and yet you're filling it.
Yeah.
You can feel the power and you can feel the connection with the audience where they're with you. They're with you.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the most powerful thing, and it's doing that. And it's funny, every now and then I'll still flip that little switch. If I'm out with my wife, I'm kind of going, okay, when you walk into a restaurant, you don't just walk in, you enter the restaurant,
Hmm.
and it's
Right.
like, we're here, and you just see the heads turning and going,
Yep. Yep.
still works. It's that attitude, it's that charisma, it's that I belong here kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I've definitely, I mean, we always, maintained a look for many years. And every
Oh
time
yeah.
we went out, we were very important. I talk to people about that. And a lot of people don't understand that.
Mhm.
Understand like, well, what difference does it make? It's like, it makes a huge difference. People,
Oh yeah.
that's how people remember you. And then when they're going to book something, they go, oh, yeah, there's that. So,
Hmm.
yeah, it's interesting. You've invented some things
Yeah.
too. I mean, you've invented your lullaby illusion, which is I'm going to put it in pedestrian terms, but it's not, but it's a floating lady
Yeah.
off of a bed that floats around the bed in a way that makes you go, how is she doing that? Because it's
Yeah.
not just, she doesn't just float up and down.
Yeah.
And it's really beautiful. And there's a whole thing that goes with it. It's a very beautiful piece of theater. And that's how
Hmm.
I describe it. I mean, a lot of things that you do are really pieces of theater. It's
Yeah.
not a magic trick. I'm not showing you a box, putting a ball in it and going, look, the ball's gone. Look, and no, there's a whole thing going on with music and lighting and emotion and acting and movement and dance and just everything. And so that's another reason why I really like doing illusions was the theatricality of it, creating
Absolutely.
those vignettes, those little pieces of theater. So
Hmm.
what you invented that, I know you invented this really cool trick, which I know not actually performed because you used to perform the lullaby illusion a lot,
Hmm.
but you invented the mirror trick, which is walking through a mirror, which is a really
Whole
cool
different way of
illusion.
doing it. Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of what what, and of course your dancing dress thing.
dancing dress, the
Yeah.
sketch pad, what we
Right.
prefer, animated sketch pad, and
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's funny. There's always new stuff. It's
Yeah.
like right now we're working on uh, a different type of escape illusion. And again, you hit the word on the head, theater.
Hmm.
I would go see movies and there would be an emotional feeling seeing the movie. I think of like Field of Dreams or The
Yes.
Natural,
Hmm.
where uh, you're like, oh my God. And I'm going, how do you create that feeling on stage?
Right.
And how do you get from here's an empty box to that feeling?
Right.
And the word is theater. And a
Hmm.
lot of it was the audience is the fourth wall,
Hmm.
and they're watching something happen where you're not playing it to them, it's just happening. And it's to create a mood and an emotion and a
Hmm.
theater
Yeah.
and a feeling, and you're building on that. And so that a lot of times is a motivation for a lot of the things I come up with. And with the escapes, basically with an escape, um, most of the time the performer is hidden from view as they're escaping. Suddenly they're out, ta-da,
Hmm.
or it's one big event. In other words, okay, there's these, massive spikes that are going to slam down on him if he doesn't escape, in a certain amount of time. And you're kind of watching this thing going, well, he's been doing this for how many years? He's not going to die,
Hmm.
whatever. And it's one big moment. And I go, how do you create something where there's several moments and you get to watch the struggle and you get to see the effort and you're witnessing those near
Right.
misses. And
Yeah.
so basically created an effect that does that, where there's three near misses inside of this escape illusion where you are escaping in full view. So they get
Hmm.
to see a clock counting down, and is he going to make it? And just,
Yeah.
you know, and going theater, and
Right.
then, okay, how do you light this to make it even more spectacular? And what kind of special effects can you build into this so it's even more theatrical and fun and
Hmm.
funny?
Yeah.
And so with all of that combined, where it's not just a magic show, it's theater,
Hmm.
that has a magical effect. It's like so many times I think of like what I'm building, it's not a magic trick, it's a special effect.
Yeah.
It's a special effect in the show to augment. And these kind of things kind of going, all right, combine it. So it is magical or whatever, but at the same time, it's connecting with an audience. So they're involved in it. They're not just kind of watching it. You can't just passively let it happen. It's connecting with you. And
Yeah.
again, movies. I remember crying at the end of The Sixth Sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember Superman with Christopher Reeve walking out of that theater and going, I want to fly.
Right.
How do you
Yeah.
get that feeling, that
Yeah.
feeling on stage? How do
Yeah.
you recreate that?
Yeah.
Copperfield is a master at that,
Yeah. Yeah.
where it was emotional. I mean, his flying levitation wasn't just a levitation. It started off as a levitation, but then he built on it to
Hmm.
the point that it's literally emotional, and
Yes.
it moves you to see it.
Right. Well, then we
Uh,
stop thinking about the trick. We start
mhm.
connecting with it emotionally. And that's really the secret, is to get you to stop thinking about the trick.
Yeah,
Stop trying to figure out the trick and
yeah,
enjoy the show and enjoy the theatricality. And especially if you can pull an emotion out of that. And yeah,
oh
you're
yeah.
right. Movies is like, it's I'm always like that. I'll see something and I'll go, that's a great moment. How can I translate that into what I'm doing? Not steal
Mhm,
from it, not borrow, not try to recreate it, but how
mhm.
can I take that emotion, what I'm feeling now, how can I put that on stage? And that's kind
Yeah.
of what you're talking about.
And also, it doesn't just have to be movies. I remember
Yeah.
great theater. I mean,
Yeah.
as an actor,
Hmm.
I've seen plenty of plays. I remember seeing Brian Dennehy in Death of a Salesman, or
Hmm.
whatever. And at the end, he's going, I am not a dime a dozen.
Yeah.
I started tearing up. The whole
Yeah.
audience is tearing up. And you're
Yeah.
going, oh my God, oh my
Yeah.
God. You could, and going, that
Yeah.
is what it's supposed to be about.
Yeah.
These simple, lightweight fluff, but that
Yeah.
was what I was aiming at and what I
Yeah.
continue to aim at.
Yeah. Yeah, there is that. There are those people that are just pure entertainment. They go out and,
Mhm.
ta-da, and that has a place, and I think it's great. It was never what I wanted to do.
No.
I tried doing it a couple of times, and I went, this. I feel I feel dirty. I
Oh,
feel dirty doing
that's
this.
exactly what was frustrating for me back in Chicago. Is those were the kind of shows that I, had to do to survive. It's like the
Hmm.
stock standard,
Yeah.
stuff. I remember the last review show I did out there. The owner of the theater just, he's having me. I need you to make balloon animals now, and I'm like, balloon animals, and he's
Yeah.
telling, okay, and then you're gonna do this joke, the hey, where are you from? Seattle. Sorry, I said Seattle. Oh, I heard you. I'm just sorry. All
Right.
those standard hack,
Yeah.
and you're going, oh no, 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 please, no, 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 and it kind of
We'll
goes,
we'll get you a silver suit and
oh yeah, I had to wear a silver suit with sequin stars on
I
it
know you did. I
because
know
I
you
came
did.
there with my wardrobe and goes, that's not flashy enough. We need you in
Right.
this. And you're like, okay,
Yeah.
they're paying me
That was
well.
the same manager who gave Cuba Gooding Jr. his start. That was her big claim to fame. She was booking some big show in Aruba. We went to her house, the
Oh,
three of
yes.
us, and it was just like, your face was priceless because it was like she goes, "I have a coat I think I want you to wear," and you were just like, "Totally not
Oh,
what
yeah.
I want to do."
Yeah.
So,
I remember, yeah, you were there with me when I declined and she couldn't believe
yeah,
I was walking
she
away
didn't
from her.
understand. Yeah, it was like,
But I found her
no.
a performer in Chicago who was perfect for her.
Hmm.
And, she was thrilled because I
Yep.
found somebody who was like, I got a guy for you who's
Yep.
exactly what you want. He'll be happy to do it. He'll do
Hmm.
everything you want,
Hmm.
but I can't do this anymore. I've done this,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
wasn't arrogance. It's just like, I've got to move away from this.
Right.
There's no future here.
Yeah.
There's no future here. So, yeah.
Yeah. What's the best like performance that you've ever had that you could say like, oh, this is like I'm in this is the best, man. What is like the show that you
Performing
can
with
name?
symphony orchestras.
Yeah.
I back when I was in Chicago, I got a directory, and again, this is pre-internet, and it
Yeah.
was a show business directory. It had a listing of every agent and every manager in the United States or Europe or whole world actually. It's a thick book. Can't even remember what it was called, but just unbelievable information. So I would sit down and write 15 letters a day with my promo kits and send
Hmm.
them out to these people,
Yeah.
just every name. Not researching who they are or what they book, but every name, just throwing stuff at the wall. And one guy wrote back to me, and he represented people who are guest soloists with symphony orchestras. He was based in New York, and back then, uh, this was a really novel concept. Nobody, I mean, nowadays every magician and their cousin is performing with a symphony orchestra. Back then this was unique,
Yeah.
and so he had this idea, and he said, "What about as a soloist with symphony orchestras, we can put together like certain standard selections that every orchestra already has in their repertoire or access to, and you
Hmm.
design your magic around that, and we book this thing." And he did. And these were some of the most incredible experiences I've ever had on stage. Because first of all, there's a wall of sound behind
Yeah.
you that is unbelievable. And there was never a lot of performing space, but also you're you're there, whatever, as a special guest. You're there as the star. It was always fascinating to me, in again back in Chicago primarily, where I do gigs where it's like a banquet hall and nobody's paying attention. And yet, if I did the exact same act and I'm opening for Rita Moreno or I'm opening for the Beach Boys, everybody is with you 100% because the environment is correct to support you. People are there specifically to see a show and to be
Hmm.
entertained.
Yeah.
You're on a stage, you have lights, you have curtains. Everything is working in your favor and you can run with it.
Yeah.
Symphony performances were like that, where it's promoted. You're in a book about who the guest artists are that year. Audience is there to see a show, and because of what we were doing with the magic, it was basically pops concerts. So they're bringing kids to the symphony for the first time.
Hmm.
So it's kids experiencing the symphony music, but in a way they've never experienced it before.
Yeah.
And everything is working for you, And also we were doing really good, strong magic,
Hmm.
and oh yeah, I get shivers thinking about some of them.
Very cool.
I remember we would always close actually with the David Copperfield sword box too in the Hall of the Mountain King,
Oh yeah.
with music that starts very slow and then gets
Right.
frenzied as it progresses, and that very theatrical, strong ending. And
Right.
that was our closing piece.
Yeah.
And I remember the girls dancers that I had access to in Chicago would practically compete to do these gigs with me, because we give them a chance to do a dance solo in front of the orchestra, before an illusion. And so afterwards, they'd be signing autographs that, they'd never
That's
had to
cool.
sign autographs in their lives. And, they just go, this is the most incredible experience I've ever done. The
Yeah.
last one I did, I remember, was in with the Denver Symphony, and we were the afternoon show, and John Denver was the evening performer.
Huh.
So as we were tearing down our show, he's on stage, rehearsing with the symphony. And I remember my assistant is helping with me. I said, "Oh, you should go check out John Denver." And she goes, "What are you talking about?" I said, "John Denver's on stage right now." And she goes, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Don't you hear John Denver?" She said, "No, that's just a PA." I said, "He's on stage right now." And she's like, "No." And she walks over to the edge and goes, "Oh my God, it's John Denver." Yeah. So, yeah. But
Yeah.
those were just incredible.
Yeah. And I
Just
suppose in a way that kind of led you into doing the ballet, which you did like 3, 4 years running. Did you do
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Yeah,
I
I know
did
you.
3 as Drosselmeyer and then 1 as Man of La Mancha. Uh,
Mm.
and yeah,
But the
and
Drosselmeyer one is the one that has like the most magic in it, where you
yeah, the other one
right.
had no magic in it. They just had me on stage being
Yeah.
theatrical and big.
Yeah, but you
Yeah,
did. I mean, you invented a bunch of stuff and you built a bunch because they like beefed up the show with
yeah.
making the Rat King, the King Rat appear.
Yep,
You had a bell that like sprayed snow as you walked across the stage and rang
yeah.
it. You produced this giant, nutcracker. You did your
Mhm.
floating lady lullaby illusion in the show.
That's what actually started it. Is I had
Yeah.
a good friend, Elmarie Wendell, who used to be one of the co-stars on the George Lopez show, as
Hmm.
Gina,
Hmm.
and she's a good friend. And she was working with this ballet company, and for the transition to the Dreamland sequence with Clara in Nutcracker, she thought the lullaby levitation bed would be perfect because.
Right. Yeah.
So she brought over the head of the company to my workshop, and I'm demonstrating the bed to her, and then started showing her a whole bunch of other magical effects that could work. And she's staring at me and she goes, "You're Drosselmeyer. I mean, your look,
Yeah.
your presence, you're a performer, the magic." She goes, "You are a real life Drosselmeyer. You have to do this." I was like,
Hmm.
"Oh, I don't perform anymore. I don't perform." She goes, "No, you have to do this."
Yeah.
And again, it was really unique. I
Yeah.
did it for several years.
Yeah. I tacked for you that one year. And of
Yes, you
course, I
did.
watched it as best I could. But the thing that I noted about it was that you fit right in. You did
Yeah.
not look like, and I'm sure I know every year there's hundreds of productions of the Nutcracker,
Yeah.
and I'm sure they hire some guy to come in and do
Hmm.
a couple of things. But the difference was you, is you move extremely well. You move like a dancer on stage, and
Yeah.
you have sort of a dancer's build. You're thin and
Hmm.
lanky, and
And I
and
know how to count,
and you know how to
with a
count, and
dancer.
you really
Yeah.
fit right in. I mean, if I didn't know you, I would never have thought like, oh well, that's the magician and they just hired this guy. I would have thought you're part of the company because you really like
Thank
just
you.
fit right in, and it really was something to see. And I'm like, wow, that's how you do that role. That's how you do that part. So I thought that
Yeah.
was
I
cool. So
remember one of my favorite reviews of it mentioned dancer magician, and I go, "I'll
hmm
take it." Yeah,
yeah,
I'll take it. It's
absolutely,
great. Now
yeah.
it's funny though. There were several. I remember, we're talking about really classically trained Russian
Oh,
ballet
very much so. Yeah,
dancers in
yeah,
the show, and I remember one of them, whatever, kind of critiquing me afterwards, saying, "Okay, when you walk on stage, it's always right foot first, and and all this kind of stuff and everything." He says, "You're doing okay, but for a real dancer, we can see." And I go,
right,
"That's okay, because you're doing magic, and for a real magician, we can see."
right. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah, there were
yeah,
a lot of great people in that show. I mean, that it would have been fun to like be spend more time with them. It was such a short
yeah.
run. We did like
Oh,
6 shows over,
great, great people.
yeah,
It's
really.
fascinating to me also the illusion. It's again theater, and standing in the wings where you watch these performers out there doing what appears to be absolutely effortless.
Yes,
And the minute they hit the wing and they're out of the audience view, it immediately collapses.
right.
So they're ta 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 ta, and once they hit the wing, suddenly it's oh,
Yeah,
oh,
it's
oh,
excruciating.
oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And
it's
you
amazing.
realize the effort they're putting into, and then watching them in the wing as they're suddenly going on, where they're just kind of slumped and people,
Hmm.
are having their little drink, and then suddenly they're, and now they're just this
Yeah,
artistic. floating across the stage and going.
Yeah.
It was I
Yeah.
loved being in the
Yeah.
wings watching it. And
And
doing
that was an actually really cool production. I mean, just the way it was staged. I mean, the choreography was really
a
something.
great
So,
job.
how
Yeah.
does that compare to like, from an acting standpoint? How does that compare for you as a performer, doing what you do, say, performing as a magician versus being Drosselmeyer? Is there a process that you sort of incorporated to get into what quote character or?
Uh, no, not really. The difference is that as a performer, when I was doing shows, it's all about generating your next gig and who
Mhm.
can you get to your every show is a showcase. And
Yeah.
so there's this whole other agenda that's going on where you're going, I've got to make sure so and so comes out to see me. I've got to make sure this, I've got to get good video. I've got to get good pictures. I've got to promote this. I've got to do this. I've got to do this. With those shows, once I left the performing aspect behind, it was the pure joy of being on stage.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
it was that without all the other
Yeah.
baggage
Yeah.
attached.
Yeah.
So it was fantastic. So
Yeah.
you just kind of show up and go, my only responsibility tonight is to enjoy myself and to have fun and make sure that I'm doing the best job I can do and that
Right.
I'm connecting with the
Yeah.
audience.
Well,
So there
that's
was all
acting.
the, yeah, so all of those little things that you learned as a stage performer, what is dramatic, what is campy, what is over the top, what is just right,
Mhm.
and you know how to find your light, you know how to hit your marks,
Yeah.
so that when you're doing it, you just kind of enjoying the process and kind of going, when I would be on stage for those shows, the thought that would be going through my mind is, remember, this is home. You belong here.
Right.
This is your home. You can go away from home, but this is literally home. There's
Yeah.
no nerves, I mean,
Yeah.
there's no kind of a thing.
Yeah.
It's just, can't wait to do this tonight. This is going to be so much fun,
Hmm.
so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doing magic shows, so many times, the process of doing a show is, for me, with the fact that I was doing stage illusions, you're basically dealing with a lot of times mechanisms,
Hmm.
and you are keeping track as you're performing, not only performing, but of, is everything going right? Is
Hmm.
anything going wrong? How do I cover for it? Is so-and-so going to hit their mark? You're responsible for all these other people. You're worried, are they going to remember that the lighting cue has to happen on this for this
Yeah.
to be strong?
Yeah.
All these thoughts are going through your head. And from my perspective on stage, it isn't magic at all. It's walking through a process.
Yeah.
It's like I can tell where I'm at, but the girl's not floating. The audience, she's floating, but from where I'm at, I know exactly she's not floating. You
Right.
know, it's like if somebody's doing an instant escape, I know what's really going on.
Right.
And it was always in retrospect that I could enjoy the show. So it'd be at night as I'd be lying in bed, I could play it back in my mind, and then I could appreciate it. And then I could hear the audience response. When it's in process, it's like, what's coming next? Okay, you got this to do and this to do. And the audience gives you a great ovation and you're unaware of it because you're somewhere else. With
Yeah.
the symphonies or with the ballet, none of that. It was
Yeah.
just letting go and
Yeah.
just enjoying.
Yeah, you're
So,
just embodying that character, and that's how I feel about acting. There was a time when I would really push to like, oh, you got to come see me in the show. You need to come, I want you to see me. And now I don't think about that. It's like if the show is
no,
good and the performance is good, word gets out and people come to see. But
yeah,
it was just about just doing the show and, like you said, doing the best job I can possibly do. It's true for me. I get, when I'm doing a play, it just depends on the play, but I'm usually like very immersed.
oh yeah,
There's nothing going on except who I'm talking to or what I'm doing on stage. So it's the same
mm-hmm.
kind of thing. Whereas you're right with magic, you're constantly thinking about
You're
when I
troubleshooting.
pick up this prop, I have to make sure I pick it up from this way because it's got this, and I got to open it up a certain way. Your brain is like you got like 10 brains on stage, and I feel
Yeah,
like
you're.
with acting, it's usually I have 10 brains, but it's usually more centralized. I'm thinking about
Mhm.
a lot of stuff, but it's like you're really only worried about being truthful and
Yeah.
so forth. So yeah, it's really interesting. And we talked about your best performances. People love to hear about good stuff, but they really like to hear about the bad stuff.
Oh
What's one of
boy.
the worst shows you've ever done? Can
Oh
you
my
can you
God.
share?
Well, yeah, oh, yes. See, the fact that you're dealing with mechanisms
Yeah,
means that there is a huge potential for something to go wrong. And by the way, it happens to every
yeah,
every magician. there's really very rarely do you have what you could say is a perfect show.
Yeah.
David Copperfield has had onstage things that have been, disasters. Doug Henning actually had a disaster on one of his nationwide TV specials that was aired live. Harry Blackstone Jr. has had them. There's nobody who hasn't had something go catastrophically wrong to the point that there's no way out. You're standing there with egg on your face, and the problem is, if you're a singer, thinking about like I can't remember who it was who was on Saturday Night Live and they started playing the wrong song and she just kind of does
Oh,
a
that's
dance.
what's her Simpson's sister, right?
Yes,
Whatever.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's a different thing. If you're supposed to be this all powerful magician and something goes wrong, the perception is you stink. You're not good because, you defeated it.
Right.
There were three that were my worst. The first one that occurred was I was doing a rock concert in Chicago, Chicago Jam rock concert. And these are promoters who are doing those kind of things like Live Aid. And this was an all-day rock festival. It was the Beach Boys, and Sha Na Na, and Blondie, and I would be the magician illusionist going out in between the segments while they're setting up the next band to do illusions. So it was an environment I wasn't familiar with. And they had promised me there was going to be a ramp, because mind you, the stage is scaffolding with plywood on top of it, 20 feet up. They said there's going to be a ramp to get all your stuff up there. And this was at the old Comiskey Park, which is a union house. I didn't realize once I drove my truck into the property, I could no longer touch anything of mine until it's on stage. Teamsters would be handling it. And of course, they're used to dealing with speakers, not delicate magic tricks. So there was no ramp, so they're forklifting everything to 20 feet up. And a lot of magic is not made to have a forklift under it. The weight is on the legs. The legs are now not taking it. They're now putting a forklift thing underneath. So I'm watching stuff get broken and destroyed as it's being put on stage. And there's nothing you can do about it. These are burly guys who don't care what you have to say. They're doing what they're doing. And we had bought a Lady Lion illusion from a local builder. This is before I was actually building. And it was extremely cheaply built. And what this is it's a cage, a girl gets into it, you cover it with a cloth, you pull the cloth away, and now there's a jungle cat in there. So we rented a cougar to be in this prop. And it survived being forklifted on stage, but the stage was made out of sheets of plywood on scaffolding, and some of the corners on some of them had broken away, so there were literally little holes in the stage. And so we successfully turned the girl into the cougar, and then as I'm pulling the thing off, one of the legs falls into a hole. So the Teamsters come running on out, and instead of lifting out of the hole, they pull harder, so they collapse the leg. Now the whole cage is tipping over onto stage with this cougar
No.
swiping at the Teamsters through the bars as they're dodging the cougar to
Oh
drag
no.
this dead prop off the
Wow.
stage. And the girl who is, even though she's not in view, is still in that cage somewhere, is in this incredibly precarious position. And that was a bad one. And but at least it was the end of the show. The ones where it happens in the show are the worst. The same sword box that I was mentioning earlier that I did for the symphonies. I was opening for Crystal Gale. There's a singer from a while back. And this was our closing illusion, and I was singing live. I used to sing live when I would do magic. I was singing Hurt So Good. It was this campy, fun routine about Hurt So Good while I was sticking the swords in the box. So I have no communication with the girl because my mic is hot and live. And she's in there, and something went wrong. I don't know if a hinge broke, but the time when I normally start putting the swords in, I could tell from the outside, there's a problem. And so I figured just get through it. And so normally you throw the swords in, you fling the door open to show it's empty, close it, take the swords out, and she's back. So I'm forcing the swords into the box, and it's fighting me back. But there's no way she can get hurt, but I can tell she's fighting me back. Something's really wrong. So instead of flinging the door open, I just kind of took a peek inside to see what was going on. And sure enough, it's a mess inside. Something is broken. And so I'm going, give her more, So I look inside, I look at the audience, I grimace. Mind you, the audience doesn't know what's supposed to happen. So they don't know that isn't just part of the trick. And I'm going, we're still okay. I close the door and I give her even more time to try to set things right inside. So I pull the swords out as fast as I can. I'm spinning it around several times to give her more time. At the end, I triumphantly fling the door open. She hasn't moved. She completely panicked and freaked out and is just inside of the box crying and convulsing. And I close the thing, the lid, and I turn it around a few more times, trying to figure out, how do you get out of this? How do you get out of this? And the problem was, there was no way out of it. And so I look at the audience and say, you've been great, thank you very much. And I wheel the prop off, and the whole audience is just gasping, thinking, he just killed the girl. And that was it. And guess which show the management of the theater came to see? So, yeah. And, you know, in my mind, I go over and go, what could you have done differently? And in some cases, you kind of go, nothing. There was nothing. There was no way out except egg on your face. So those happen.
So can you talk about right now, can you talk about what you're working on now?
Yeah.
You know, because I know that you started a new gig about 3 years ago,
Yeah.
really been very lucrative for you. And
Mhm.
you know, tell me what you can, because I know that you
It,
always
it,
have in certain cases NDAs that you sign that you're like not
yeah,
allowed to
yeah,
talk about certain things.
especially with this one. But it's it's basically an entertainment company, whatever, an international entertainment company, and they have a series of locations. And you know, again, through a great magician named Bobby Borgia, whatever, who we knew from back in L.A. He is
Mhm.
now in Erie, Pennsylvania. Just opened up a magic comedy club called Keller's Comedy Magic Club. Keller was a very famous magician in the 1920s, 30s era.
A little
Uh,
before that, because then he handed it off to Thurston.
exactly,
And
yeah.
Thurston
Uh,
lived from, I just looked this up because I just bought a poster of Thurston.
oh,
Um,
cool.
it, it 18, like, I think Thurston died in like 36 or 26 or something. So he
Yeah,
lived very short time, like 50 years or something. So yeah,
yeah.
but he worked with Keller. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So no, so Keller actually was from Erie, Pennsylvania, where Bobby is at, and so
Mhm.
he opened a club basically dedicated to Harry Keller or whatever, and
Mhm.
is doing quite well with it. But he was the magic consultant for this company, and then uh, he brought me in to be the builder, and it's been extraordinary. So, you know, of course, with COVID, everything shut down, and we figured, okay, nothing is going to be kicking back in for at least a year. And then out of the blue, they were just like, nope, we're moving forward. And so, you know, suddenly I'm in the workshop, have been for the past 2 months, and I'm, you know, swamped on, at least for them through March.
Yeah.
So, so yeah,
Yeah.
I'm one of the lucky ones, you
Yeah.
know. But
And
again,
these are going into like shows. So it's like,
oh yeah,
it's not just like, here's a trick. These are like
no.
incorporated into very
Yeah.
theatrical things.
A
So
lot
that's
of them are
very
more
cool.
special effects in a show rather than magic tricks. Some are presented as full-on magic tricks, but you know, dealing with incredible costume designers and
Hmm.
set designers, and you know, uh, this is the magic that's going into producers' shows. So dealing with 4 different producers, and
Yeah.
it's great. You know,
Yeah.
it's a big creative family. You know, and we have these Zoom meetings where everybody's there, and it literally is like a family. Everybody's
Yeah.
smiling. We're all under pressure, you know, to do what we can, but nonetheless, you know, dealing with people who are pretty top of the game, which
Yeah.
is so, you know, extraordinary. You know, I mean, it's like as a performer, you run the gamut from, you know, dealing with like a local low end, you know, community theater style thing, but it's not even. It's where in community theater where nobody ever had an acting job in their life. Nobody has any training. And then you've got community theater where you go, yeah, this is like what, you know, real working actors are doing in
Yeah.
between the major gigs. And this is the real
Yeah.
thing, especially here in LA. There's a lot of that where you go to
Yes.
see a show and you're going, I know that guy. Oh my God, that's so and so from him. And
Right.
it's in a community theater
Yeah.
production, but it's really good and
Yeah.
really good acting.
Yeah.
So, you know, um,
Yeah.
but yeah, dealing with these people, it's great. You know, where they deliver what they say, they listen, and extraordinarily creative, which
Yeah.
is just it's such a great environment.
Yeah.
You know, it's like back in Chicago, I did a lot of industrial shows, and you're dealing with corporate world,
Hmm.
and sometimes they're very locked in, you
Hmm.
know, and very rigid in what they want. With
Right.
creatives, a lot of times it's what if, and
Yeah.
then okay, how, you
Yeah.
know. and is this possible?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Blue
it's good.
sky is a new term I learned a few years back, which is it's an Imagineer term where they say it's like the wildest thing. They would say design a ride for Indiana Jones, and it can be blue sky, and that was like
That's
whatever you
great.
want it to be, and just design the wildest thing, and it's like
I've never heard that
it'll
term
never
before, but
get
I'm going to
built
use it from
because
now on.
it's too expensive or too big or whatever,
Yeah,
and it just gets scaled down from there. But I like that term of just like blue sky,
I love
whatever
that
you can
term.
imagine. So yeah,
Yeah, no, it's so true. It's like a lot of
yeah,
times with meetings with people and they're not quite sure whatever. My first
yeah,
question is, if you could do anything, and I want anything, what would
right,
you do?
yeah,
What would you imagine seeing?
yeah,
Remember, I had a meeting with Childish Gambino or whatever,
mhm,
and for his tour. Unfortunately, it was only 3 weeks away, so there was no time to build anything. But I remember that was my question. It's like, so you want to put magic in it? What do you visualize?
right,
Anything,
yeah,
anything, no limits. What do you see? And then we'll
yeah,
try to figure out if we can get that or get close or
hmm,
what. And it's great. Blue sky. That's great. I'm taking
yeah,
that. I love
yeah,
that.
yeah. I'm surprised Jim Steinmeier, because Jim is a former Imagineer.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I'm surprised he never mentioned that. But yeah, I watch a lot of like Disney creative stuff, and so
Oh,
that's
I
a
love
term
that
they
stuff.
use is blue sky. But yeah, and um, that's really interesting. Yeah, I felt that way just recently because I do a lot of local theater.
Hmm.
And a lot of it's, I mean, most all of it, what I do is very professionals that have been doing it for
Great.
years.
Of
But
course,
it's
you're right.
interesting to work with a company that does like production shows. And I did that when I did the ice show at SeaWorld, and they just came in and
Mhm.
they're like, they choreographer this and this and this. And, they just had their act together basically, which is
Oh yeah.
always a pleasure. It's like, oh, I don't really need to worry about anything. They got it covered. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's great. Yeah, I've always said about you that, and I mean, we don't have the time to sit here because I know you've not only met, but you've worked for a giant list of celebrities. I mean, of people that just you've built things for them, you've consulted, et cetera, TV shows and magicians,
Yeah.
and so much of your stuff has ended up um, on television. You've probably had I mean, you've had so many things on TV, on major
Yeah.
national shows, from magic specials to other things as well.
Yeah.
And I've always said that somebody, either you or somebody, should write a book. You know, that you should write a book about your experiences, and you should write a book. Somebody should write a book about your inventions because you've got some really clever stuff that you've come up with, even just things down to like, quote, trapdoor things that
Mhm.
are really fascinating, that you are problem solving. And that's really what you do, is you're a puzzle problem solver,
Yeah.
you know,
I
and
was
then you,
fascinated by puzzles as a child,
mhm,
and
yeah,
and figuring stuff out and figuring out
yeah,
how. It's
yeah,
like there's very little where you go, all right, there's no answer. Most of
yeah,
the time you can find something. There's a
hmm,
compromise. You can
yeah,
find something.
and figure out how do I do this and eliminate that. I want
Hmm.
that gone and I want that to be here. So yeah, very
Yeah.
interesting. Well, Craig, this has been amazing,
Thank you.
and
And well, thank you.
I haven't seen you in so long because of
I know.
haven't been able to travel up and see you. But thank you for coming on. We're
Thank
going to
you.
put a link in the bottom to Craig's website, so you can
Great.
go and look at some of these illusions we've been talking about. And of course, thank you for watching. This has been Stage Perspective. My very special guest and very close friend, Craig Dickens, magician, builder, designer, consultant. What was the other one we came up with? Uh,
Um,
uh,
Zod.
Zod, leader of the earth. And this has been Stage Perspective. So if you like this video, please, give it a like and watch some of the other videos. We have quite a collection of videos. And if you want, subscribe to the channel. And we will see you next time. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you. Bye bye now.
Bye bye.